Hi, folks. My name is Julio. Thanks for joining us today. I'm joined by Mallory Renner, who will introduce herself in just a bit. I'm a psychologist from the University Counseling Center, and I've been with UIO for about 2 years, and I've been with the Counseling Center for that same amount of time. Today is going to be about teaching you all study tips, but before we go into that, I want to pause there, and then I'd love to hear more from Mallory and have her introduce herself. Thank you.
So as Julio said, my name is Mallory. I'm a student at the University of Wyoming studying nursing. I'm also the mental health subcommittee lead for the Wellness Ambassador RSO on campus.
As we're right in the middle of finals week, Mallory and I thought we'd take this time to know that, acknowledge this can be a stressful time, not just for you, but for anyone, especially since you're at home, not able to go to campus, not able to see your friends. A lot of challenges are happening. But Mallory and I are here to give you some useful tips on how you can better prepare for exams and de-stress a bit while you're taking them. So I'm going to stop there, and Mallory, let's get some study tips.
Awesome, Julio. So my first tip is to utilize multiple studying mediums. For example, if you're repeatedly going over slides, maybe try reading a book or looking at a YouTube video to solidify key concepts. I know for me personally, I utilize Khan Academy all the time. It was super helpful in solidifying key concepts, especially in math and science. My next study tip is to study in intervals. The rule of thumb is to study for 20-ish minutes and then take a 5 to 10 minute break. However, I find this personally difficult to stop in the middle of a task and then have to will myself to come back to it. So instead, I try to break my studying into task completion. For example, I will study one lecture, take a quick break, and then come back to the next lecture. Repeat this process until you've covered what you need to get done so you don't get burnt out. My last study tip is practice makes perfect. Test yourself using the same format as your upcoming exam. Make a multiple choice Quizlet. You can even practice with your friends over the phone. I utilize the flashcard tool in Quizlet all the time. It helps me so much when it comes to memorizing key concepts. Okay, so now we're going to transition to test taking skills. I've come up with a couple of skills that help with multiple choice exams as well as essay exams. For multiple choice exams, I think the test should be, think of it as like a conveyor belt. Carefully choose an answer and then move on. It can be so easy getting bogged down on a tough question. In the case that you're struggling, select your gut answer, start the question, and then come back to it later if you have time. My second tip for multiple choice is try not to second guess yourself. I personally struggle with this one a lot. It is common for me to go back and second guess my initial answers, especially when I'm going back through my exam, checking my answers. Trust that you know the material. Individuals that go back and change answers tend to have lower scores. You know this, you know the material, stick to your gut answer. The last study skill I have for multiple choice questions is the trickiest questions are seemingly easy questions. Make sure to read each question carefully and circle important words like not, always, or never to avoid simple mistakes. Now I'm going to talk about essay exams. Some tips for essay exams include reading the prompt carefully, understand what the question is asking, and ask for clarification when necessary. Make a brief outline before you begin writing. Organized and logical answers are always better. You want to make sure your paper has a nice flow. If your paper is paper and pencil, use neat handwriting. For you to ace your exam, the professor has to be able to read your writing. And finally, once you finish, if you have enough time, try and reread what you've written. This way you can check for spelling and punctuation errors. All right, I'm going to hand it over to Julio.
Excellent tips and tricks. So I'll start talking to you about two things, how to perform well at math exams, and then ways to relax yourself and perform the best you can. When it comes to math exams, a lot of you might be timed. And when this occurs, you can have a lot of anxiety when you start out these exams, and that might lead you to have trouble with the first question. And then what you want to do, though, since you are timed, is maybe to skip over that question, go to a question that you may be a little bit less complicated, that you can easily complete, and then come back and finish that more difficult question as you go forward. The second thing, if you're being closely monitored on these exams, what you might want to do is dump out any formulas you haven't already. That way you can reference them later. Third, math exams, they can always create a lot of nervousness in lots of folks. So what you want to try and do is during the exam, practice what's called paced breathing. And that is counting, breathing in for a count of 3, for example, and breathing out for a count of 5. The numbers aren't as important as making sure that your out breath is longer than your in breath. That will help lower your heart rate, help you to feel calmer, more relaxed, and probably you'll have a better chance of performing well when you're more relaxed as opposed to feeling anxious. Lastly, next tip, check for careless answers. It's very important to look at all the processes of your math problems just in case you made a silly mistake that you can go back and correct later. Also, if you happen to have the incorrect answer, many professors will give you points for the processes that you got correct, whereas they wouldn't give you as many points if you didn't follow the processes correctly. When it comes to mastery of your subjects, if that's something you're interested in, what you want to do is after the exam, look over any processes that you didn't get correct the first time and learn from your mistakes and correct those mistakes in the future. That way you'll have real mastery over the subject. If mastery is a part of your educational career, then you want to go back and look over things you didn't get correct. That way you can improve them upon next time. The day of the exam or the night of the exam, or whatever may happen for you, you want to do two things. The first thing is a strategy called a mental walkthrough. You want to mentally walk through what it's going to be like to take that exam. Visualize yourself sitting down in your chair, sitting in your room, whatever the case may be, sitting in front of your computer on Zoom, whatever the case may be, and reenact the exam as if it's really happening. If you're going to feel nervous, scared, maybe even anxious, then what you want to do is practice experiencing that anxiety, practice experiencing that shortness of breath, practicing experiencing those jitters. Because the next day when you actually take the exam, that'll already be old hat to you. You've already practiced performing well under pressure, and you already have an idea about what that looks like. Again, during the exam, practice paced breathing, which includes breathing in to a count of 3, for example, and breathing out to a count of 5. Again, that will lower your heart rate and put you into a more relaxed place and the opportunity to do better. Last, recognize the work that you've done. This has been a very challenging semester for all of you students, and you've done the best you can with really upsetting circumstances sometimes. Recognize that you've studied hard, you've done the best you can to get to this place, you put in the work, and you've also put in more work than you probably had to, because for a lot of people, online is not your forte. Very okay. It's not lots of people's, and for a lot of people, online has been really challenging. Recognize that you've put in the work, that you've done the studying, that you put yourself in the best position possible, and say to yourself, I prepared well, and I'm going to do the best I can. Imagine yourself getting that A and earn that A. Imagine yourself getting that B, earn that B. Imagine yourself doing the best you can, and your behaviors, I bet, will match that. So everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. We know the Cowboy family is tough, and if you need some additional resources, which are always helpful, the University of Wyoming's libraries website has put together a page just for students, including study tips, music playlists, and quick links to make sure that your finals are as successful as possible. Anything else, Mallory, before we break today?
I just want to thank you, Julio, for giving us all those great tips. I want to reiterate taking those deep breaths during exams. This is a very odd circumstance. There's a lot of anxiety and stress that comes along with everything that's going on and having this brand new learning environment. So take those deep breaths, give yourself some positive affirmations. You know the material, you've done great this semester, you're almost there, and you guys are going to do great.
Thanks everyone for joining and watching this video, and go Pokes!
Go Pokes!